I think the disability movement is still balkanized. I think we still live in groups that say parents of kids with cognitive disabilities, parents of kids with developmental disabilities, parents of children with, quote, special health care needs, whatever that means, parents of kids with physical disabilities or sensory disabilities, adults with all of these various kinds of disabilities. And I think we've learned to protect the little piece that works for us. And policy has been written to serve little slices of population. And so we have home and community-based waivers that serve a little slice of the population of people who have developmental disabilities. And then we have independent living centers that serve the slice of the population. My take is mostly people who became disabled later in their lives. Mostly people who are adults who don't have a cognitive or a intellectual impairment but have a physical disability. I think everybody's trying to find a way over those walls and to find a way out from under that idea that we all have to be somehow separate or hierarchical. There's a hierarchy in disability, and it goes something like people with really severe mental health issues, people with really severe developmental disability and cognitive issues, people with less severe mental health issues, people with really severe physical disabilities, people with mild cognitive impairment, people with minor physical disabilities or less severe physical disabilities, people with sensory disabilities. I mean, I don't know who's at the top. I'm not sure if it's the guy with a spinal cord injury or the guy who's blind or the deaf person. It's one of those. And a lot of folks who have really significant physical disabilities, for example, have to spend their whole lives proving that they don't have a cognitive disability. They have to spend their whole life proving that, look, I'm fully able to run my own life. Maybe that's one of the things that Ed was demonstrating over and over again. I'm in charge here. Yes, I came out to dinner with 8 people. I'm in charge here. And when he met my son, I think he was pretty freaked out by how disabled Charlie is. Charlie came to hear him speak. And Charlie's not quiet when he listens to people. And if he really likes what he hears, he's really noisy. And Charlie was really noisy while he was listening to Ed. And the weird thing is, I don't know, maybe for 10 years after he heard Ed speak, Charlie kept mimicking the sound of the respirator. So you'd be sitting around with Charlie and all of a sudden he'd start going, and it took the longest time to figure out what that was, why he was doing that. Most people with a lot of disabilities, when they see somebody like my son, they immediately go into a mode that's all about proving that they're different, that they're better than or different from, or, you know, there's a few. There's several people in the independent living movement who will reach out to my son. There's several people in the self-advocacy movement who will reach out to them. But I think the first one was probably Ed, who just came up to him and said, "Charlie, you're a really loud guy," which is true, and was a very insightful statement to make about Charlie. You know, I've called the Independent Living Center in my hometown to ask for help with my mother, of all things. My mother spent her life as a nurse and is very disabled now at the end of her life, and we were trying to find ways for her to live at home and have the support that she needed. And I thought, you know, it was really cool when she can barely speak, and she got to a point where she said to my dad, he said, "Well, honey, you know, you're sick." And he said, "No, I'm not sick, I'm disabled." And I thought that was really cool that she could say that. And I called the Independent Living Center to ask for help, and they said, "Well, we don't do old people." And I also know people who've called the Independent Living Center for help with a son or daughter who has a cognitive disability, and they'll say, well, we don't do people with intellectual disabilities. And I'm sure if you call a lot of chapters of the ARC or a lot of programs that serve folks who have developmental disabilities and say, well, I have a son or daughter with severe physical disabilities, they'll say, well, we don't do those people. And it's really the funding stream that makes that happen. But that's not how it feels if you're on the end of the phone call trying to get help. I don't know how we're going to figure that out. I don't know how we're going to figure out what equity is between, the guy who needs help getting out of bed and getting to work in the morning and then getting back into bed at night. And what help should he have and how should he be supported versus the guy who doesn't speak and doesn't toilet himself. I don't know how we're going to figure that out. That's something we have to figure out. And I think, if the independent living centers and self-advocates and people who are advocates for folks with cognitive disabilities, and if we could all find some way to get together and figure out what that means, I think we would have more power than if we wait for a government or Congress or somebody else to figure it out. I don't think they're going to figure it out right. I think they're going to mess it up. And I think leaving it the way it is what drives us apart. And we don't realize that we're being driven apart by the policy, not by anything inherent in our disability or inherent in our experience.